Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel, and welcome back to another video. As you can see by the title, we are going to go into another love spell gone wrong, and this time it's going to be from a male's perspective. And of course, I do thank you guys for returning to my channel and taking the time to listen out to this story, and I hope you all like it. So basically, in today's story, we're talking about a man named Jeremy. And Jeremy was very well known within the city, but he was also well known for being like the player type, the type that could get any female that he wanted, and the type that just basically would take in a female, sleep with her, and then throw her out like yesterday's trash. So Jeremy, being Jeremy, he decided that he was going to go to a local bar, like a local pub, basically, where they had like live singers that would be on stage, and just just as far as like entertainment, you had your drinks, everyone could socialize and basically have a good time. So while Jeremy was there's a new singer who took to the stage. And this woman in Jeremy's eyes was so beautiful because she was not like all the other women that were in the town. She was actually not from the town, and that really took Jeremy's interest because he was like, okay, she doesn't know my reputation. She doesn't know anything about me. This is the perfect bait for me. This is the perfect woman I can pull up, do my thing. She'll fall for me. And then, of course, I'll toss her to the wayside like I do all the other females in this town. So after the lady had gotten done performing, she went ahead and went backstage. And Jeremy, since he knew everybody, it's like, okay, so Jeremy could get along with the men. Like, all the men knew how he was and what he was about and stuff, but the men also respected Jeremy to a certain level, basically. So Jeremy could get away with a lot of stuff in the town. So of course he went backstage and he asked the security guard, man, I really feeling this girl. I really like her and stuff. Let me holler at her. And so at first the security guard was like, man, don't waste your time. I know how you are. She's not even from here. She's a good performer and we want her to come back. So please don't do anything stupid that's going to prevent her from coming back and performing. And Jeremy's like, man, nah, don't worry about it, man. You know me. Come on, man. Don't worry about me. I got this. Just let me talk to her. Just let me talk to her. So the security guard took a deep breath. He took a sigh. And he's like, go on, man. Just go on and talk to her. So Jeremy, pulled up his suit, his jacket and stuff, and fixed his goatee and did all that and stuff. And, he strutted himself on the way into this woman's dressing room. So he knocked politely. And at first he didn't get an answer. So he's just kind of like, oh, well, is she okay? Is she getting dressed? Is she getting dressed? So he knocked again, just a little bit harder. And so she opens the door, and like to his amaze, he just seeing her even more close in person. He was even more taken by her beauty. And almost to the point where it almost took his breath. And he was just like, wow. He's like, you are a very beautiful woman. What is your name? And she was like, well, my name is Layla. And he was like, Layla, that is such a beautiful name. My name is Jeremy, and it's a pleasure to meet you. And Layla was just kind of like, okay, why are you here? Is there something you need, something you want? You're here, basically in my dressing room. And so Jeremy kind of saw the expression that she was giving him, like as if, you need to back off. I have no interest in you whatsoever. So he's like, oh, he's thinking, he's like, oh, she's hard to get. She's one of those who I may have to put a little bit of extra spice on top of that just to get to her. So he was like, well, Layla, it's nice meeting you. If you're doing anything after the show, I would love to basically meet up with you. Maybe we can go out to dinner. How long are you in town for? Just different things like that. Just trying to keep her pique and try to keep her interest. And so Layla was thinking in the back of her mind, here we go, another man hitting on me, trying to get with me when he really just wants to be, he wants to get in my pants. And so she went ahead and agreed to dinner with Jeremy, because she was thinking in her head, okay, well, he's offering, so why not go ahead and take it? That doesn't necessarily mean that I have to date him. It doesn't necessarily mean that I have to sleep with him. So she went ahead and took the date. They went on a date. Jeremy put forth his best skills to Layla to try and get her to open up to him, and in hopes to come, for her to go and sleep with him. So at the end of the date, they stepped outside, and like Jeremy kind of tried to get closer to Layla, like so he could hopefully like give her a kiss. And so Layla just kind of backed off and was like, "Wait a minute, what are you doing?" And he was like, "Well, I really enjoyed our night, and I just want to, just end things off with a kiss." He's like, "What's wrong with a kiss?" And she's like, "I do not kiss men on the first date." And she's like, "I barely know you." And she said, "Good night, Jeremy," and she walked off. So in Jeremy's mind, Jeremy was like, "This." Basically, he basically called her bitch in his head, because he was like, he wasn't used to a woman turning him down, especially after he's taking her out to dinner. Every woman, whoever he dealt with or approached, she obliged to his advances. But here was Layla, who didn't like him, still was not falling for what it was he was throwing at her. So he was like, man, he's like, what I gotta do? Because he found out during dinner that she was only going to be in town for 3 days before returning back home. He was like, man, he's like, okay, I got 2 more days where I really got to do what I need to do. And so he went ahead and called Layla later on that evening. Of course, she did not answer. So he called again, and she finally picked up the phone. And he was like, hey, he's like, it's me, it's me, Jeremy. And I'm really, interested in seeing you again. When can I see you again? And so Layla was just like, are you, why are you so high strung on wanting to see me? Like, what's going on and stuff? And he's like, well, I really felt that we had a vibe. I really felt that, we mixed well with each other. And so Layla was just like, look, listen, she's like, I thank you for taking me out to dinner, but honestly, Jeremy, I'm not interested. So you can go ahead, save your time, save your words. I have my mind elsewhere, and I'm not trying to be with you. So, and then she ended up hanging up the phone. And it's like, Jeremy really did not like that. Like, Jeremy did not do well with people turning him down whatsoever, because he was known as the one that always got what he wanted. And here was somebody who wasn't even from here, who really didn't even know him, turning him down. So of course he was just like, okay, well, he sat and he thought about it, and he was just like, I really like this girl. I can't understand why she doesn't want to be with me. I can't understand why she's not dropping her panties like all these other women are doing. What's wrong with me? What's wrong with her? So he went ahead and went to the store and got like a big bouquet of roses and flowers for her. I'm going to deliver this to her. I'm going to show up at her doorstep. She's going to be so, surprised and taken by me getting flowers for her. And then he also decided to pick her up like a little diamond ring. Now, this wasn't, of course, a real diamond ring, but he felt like, okay, let me start off with this. So I'm going to get her this ring, and I got her these roses. And so he showed up to tell where she was at. And so when she saw everything, she just kind of like, what is this? Again, like, what are you doing? I told you the other night that I'm not interested. Here you are. Why are you showing up with the roses and the ring? And he's just like, well, I just really wanted to give this to you. Again, I really like you. I'm really feeling you. And here's just a token of my, appreciation, just to show you how much I like you. He's like, can I please come upstairs so we can sit and talk? And she said, no. She's like, look, I told you the other night, I'm not interested. So please leave me alone. And so she walked off again and just left him there. She didn't even take the roses. She didn't even take the gift. So Jeremy walked off. He was upset. He was pissed off. But he was like, I got these roses. I got this ring. She didn't even want it. Like, I tried to offer this to her. She should feel appreciated that I even took the time to buy the roses and get the ring for her. What is her problem? And so he ended up giving the roses and the gift to a homeless person that he saw sitting on the side of the street. He's like, here you go. I don't need it. Take it. And so he went on home, and he stayed up the whole night just thinking like, what's wrong? Like, what can I do to get this woman to like me? And so he thought about it. He's like, something? The town does have a quote unquote witch doctor, and the lady's name was Miss Maddie. And they were always saying, like, whatever you do, don't go and see Miss Maddie for any kind of workings or rituals done, because of course you will get what you ask for, but for everything that's given, there's a price for everything that's given. So basically, if you ask her to do something, you have to give her something in return. And it always doesn't end up being a happy ending for that person that has to, pay back for the workings that she did. But Jeremy was to the point where he was just so high strung on himself. He couldn't understand why this woman did not want him. He went to go see Miss Maddie. He didn't care. So he went up to her door, and she lived in like an old shack that's like in the back of the woods, like outside of town. He went up there, walked to her door, and of course he knocked. Didn't get an answer. For some reason, people don't want to answer on the first knock. And so he kind of peeped through the window and was looking and stuff like, where is she? I know she's in here because she doesn't come out. And so he went ahead and knocked on the door again. And then finally, Miss Maddie came to the door and she opened the door. She opened the door very slowly and you could hear the door creak. And she stood there and she looked at him. She didn't say anything. She just stood there and she looked at him. And he looked at her. She looked back at him and he was just like, hello? And she was just like, and he kind of just was like, okay, this is weird and stuff. And she was like, boy, what do you want? What do you want? You're here at my door. What do you want? And so he was like, what? I want you to cast a love spell on somebody who's basically not giving me the attention that I want. And she just kind of looked at him like, she looked him up and down. And she could tell right away what kind of man he was. And she's like, oh, you want me to cast a love spell on somebody? Okay, we'll come in. And so he walked in, and as he walked through her house, he could see like all these old pictures and old artifacts and like voodoo dolls and just little trinkets of things that like basically look like a haunted movie, basically, that you see whenever you see like a witch's house, basically. And so he went and he sat down at her table, and she sat down in front of him, and she was like, so who is this person that you want me to cast a spell on? And so he went ahead and told Miss Maddie Layla's name and stuff, and he told her that she was not from here and that she was singing at the pub the other night and that Layla would not take any of his advances. Like, he was tired of it, and he wanted Miss Maddie to do a spell on her to make Layla fall completely in love with him. But he didn't tell exactly why he wanted Layla to be in love with him. And of course, we know he wanted Layla to be in love with him so that he could sleep with her. So basically, she was just another name he could add to his list. And so little did Jeremy know that Layla was Maddie's granddaughter. And so Miss Maddie just sat there and she listened and she looked at him and she was like, oh, okay. And she was thinking in the back of her head, oh, you're trying to get my granddaughter. And like, Miss Maddie, not only was she, a witch doctor, but she was also a psychic. So she already knew. Like I said, when she saw him for the first time, she knew what he was about. But then when he asked for her to put a spell on her granddaughter, her blood, she just knew right away. She was like, okay. She's like, well, it's going to cost you. One of the things that it was going to cost was him basically losing the attraction of all the other women in the town. That was the first thing that was going to cost him, right? So basically, if he wanted Layla to be focused solely on him, there could be no other distractions from other women. So therefore, you would then become ugly to these other women because it's only Layla who you want. So that was the first thing she listed that he had to basically switch up and basically pay his price for this spell to be done. And then secondly, she told him, she was like, once you get Layla, after the day that you guys marry, you will basically lose all the feelings for Layla, if that makes sense. Like, after you guys wed and you get married, she's your wife, she's in love with you, you will no longer have feelings for her. And so Jeremy thought about it, and he's like, man, he's like, that's fine. He's like, I can move to another town. It's okay if these other women don't like me. And once me and Layla get married, once I lose feelings for her, of course, I can divorce her. We can go our separate ways. Miss Maddie, she agreed, and she was like, okay. So she did her working. She burnt the candle. She spoke over it and did everything that Jeremy asked her to do. And at the end, she wished Jeremy well, and Jeremy went on about his way. And when Miss Maddie closed the door, she just burst out laughing because she knew exactly what kind of spell she did not put on Layla, but she had put on Jeremy. And so within this spell, Jeremy noticed that, you know, he remembered that Miss Maddie saying that all the other women would find him ugly, but they'd no longer find him attractive. So as Jeremy would walk through the town and, you know, speak to the women and stuff, the women were kind of looking at him like, oh, like, why are you speaking to me and stuff like that. And he would hear the women like whispering to each other and looking at him like, do you see him? Do you see him? Like, do you see what he looked like? Oh, you know, stuff like that. And at first, Jeremy was kind of like, wait a minute now. I didn't think I was going to be this ugly to, you know, the women. Like, none of these women like me anymore. And so he went on, he just kind of cleaned himself up and shrugged it off and just walked off, to, you know, the pub and the other stores and different things that he did throughout his day. But it's like throughout the whole entire day, every single female was looking at him like he was just like basically shit under their shoes. Like he was like the nastiest, dirtiest, ugliest thing they had ever seen. So of course, Jeremy being so confident in his looks and his appearance, this hit him hard. And he was like, man, he's like, but I'm gonna have Layla. I want Layla. And it's like he was so focused on the fact that he wanted to sleep with Layla. So it didn't matter if these other women didn't want him, because more than most likely he had already slept with them. So he's just like, okay, man. He's like, this is what Miss Maddie said. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna go forth with it. And so he went on about his day and stuff like that. And next thing you know, he heard a knock at his door and he opened it and it was Layla. And Layla was like, well, hello, Jeremy, you know, can I come in? And so he's like, yeah, come on in, stuff like that. And so he sat down and they talked and they had wine, watched a movie, and, you know, just had a perfect night together. Even though Layla had came to visit him, she still did not sleep with Jeremy. So, of course, Jeremy was still kind of frustrated with it, because he was like, you know, the whole sole purpose was her to fall in love with me so that we can sleep together. And so after Layla left, he was just kind of like, he was upset, because he's like, you know, I have all these other women thinking I'm ugly, and the main person who I want still did not sleep with me. And so he was kind of upset. He was like, you know, I did this for Miss Maddie, and she, you know, she said she did the work. This was supposed to happen. So he let another day pass, and this was the last day that Layla was going to be in town before leaving to go out of town. And so basically what she did is she came back over and Layla ended up sleeping with him. Now the thing is, it's like after Layla slept with him, Jeremy fell asleep. And when Jeremy woke up, he noticed that things just felt different. It felt like he had been asleep for years, like time had passed. And so he just sat there and he just kind of like, wow, he's like, what kind of sleep was that? Like, what happened? And the last thing that he could remember was sleeping with Layla. So he sat up and he stretched and he yawned and he just kind of looked around and stuff. And his apartment, you know, looked like pretty dusty compared to what it usually is. And so he, you know, got up, peeped out, looked out the window, and like everything just looked different. And he was like, what the hell just happened? And so he stepped outside and he was looking, and like the cars looked different, the building looked different, the town looked different. The only thing that looked any kind of remnants of familiarity to him was his apartment. So it turned out after Jeremy had slept with Layla, he had actually been sleeping for years, and nobody in the town could figure out who he was, basically. Like they couldn't figure out where he was, who he was, and basically just figured like he just skipped town. He just dipped and he just left. So Jeremy was very, very upset about it. And the first thing he did was go to see Miss Maddie. But when he went to go see her, she was no longer living there. Like her whole house had been, you know, in shambles, falling apart. It looked like, you know, it hadn't been touched in years, in which it hadn't. And he was just like, what, you know, what the hell is going on? So of course, as he was walking back to town, he noticed that the women were still looking at him like as if he was shit under their shoes, like as if he was so ugly that they could not stand him. And it got to the point where months had gone by and years had gone by, and he was still unable to get any of the attraction or affection of the women that he once had before. And so it ended up really doing a thing to Jeremy, to where the point he was just like, you know, I can't do this anymore. I might as well skip town. I might as well leave town, because I can't take this. And I know that the women in another town will still find me attractive. It's like he was still so confident and so high strung on how his looks and how he could just get whatever female he wanted, that he really didn't even care about the fact of what had just happened after sleeping with Layla and how years time had passed. It was like his mind was just like a completely different mind, to where he was still solely focused on what he was before he had slept with Layla. So it was just kind of like he went to another town. He was still getting the same unattractive looks from females, and he could not figure out what was going on. So it got to the point where Jeremy was so frustrated with him not being able to pick up on females or anything like that, that he ended up just completely shutting himself up in the house. And so he shut himself up in the house for so long, to the point where he ended up passing away in that house. And the thing is, what's scary about it is that even though he passed away in his house, nobody came to see him, because one, he had moved to a different town and nobody really knew him, and therefore nobody really cared about him. So here's Jeremy sitting up in his couch. He's passed away. Time has passed to the point where he has just become, a skeleton, and nobody knows who he is. And so this all happened because Jeremy decided to go to the witch doctor in order to sleep with Layla. And of course, Miss Maddie gave him what he wanted. Like, he got Layla, he got to sleep with her. But the trick to basically the price he had to pay was not being attractive to any more other females. So therefore he could not sleep around and do other females wrong because of this spell. But it was like, since Jeremy was so focused on getting Layla and knowing that he could get Layla, he did. And that's what happened. So that's the end of this story, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. I thank you for tuning in. And of course, as I always say, if you have any questions or comments, do feel free to leave them in the comment section. This is probably going to wrap up the whole love spell videos that I have been doing. I think this makes about 4 of them right now, with the 2 that I have made in this attire. So again, I thank you all for returning to my channel, and of course, enjoy the rest of your day, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.